Hi there. In this video, I'd like to showcase a new feature I've been working on as part of Esdief. Previously, if I open up a scene here, I showed the ability to implement scripts. So here in this scene, I have a little toy car, and I have a script here on the camera that tells it to follow the car object, and a script here that says for the car to go forward based on its own rotation. And then if I press arrow keys, turn left or turn right, and then also rotate the wheels. So if I just hit play here, we can see that it's a pretty simple script. And it works fine, but there's a few issues that I wanted to deal with, and I wasn't too happy with. One, in terms of ease of writing, it's not the simplest. It requires you to sort of memorize how all this stuff works. Remembering what the function names are or what these attribute names are, as well as implementing these sort of nested subcommands can get very confusing, even for myself, let alone for someone who I'm giving this program to. So that's one main issue. And the other main issue is memory management. Because I've set up an object in the scene to have these list of attributes that you can access at any time via these scripts, I can't simply rely on smart pointers all the time. And so I'm constantly accessing these memory and creating new variables whenever I do something like, adding or rotating. And I can't always be sure that I'm cleaning up each variable very well, because there's a lot of ambiguity in writing these lines, whether something is a variable or it's an existing attribute on an object or it's a new variable I'm creating, and that was causing a decent amount of issues. So if I just clear my scene here, and I will put my camera back to perspective. So what I've been working on instead is something I'm calling a guide. A guide is what I'm imagining as sort of a hybrid between a typical script and visual programming. It's pretty similar to a node system, but you'll see how it differs shortly. So on my object menu, I have this new sort of map-looking icon, or a guide, if you will. And so in the new guide here, I have a few options here. This sort of determines how the guide is called. So is it called on start, every update frame, or these specific events, or invoked means only when another guide tells it to run. I also have a list of variables. So these are sort of built-ins that are on the guide itself. And I can also at any point add new ones and update these dynamically. I also have the ability to just sort of run the guide right now, and this just enables and disables it. So I'm going to create a guide that will just spawn in a bunch of shapes, and maybe we'll rotate them. A very, very simple guide. So here I can select whatever command I want. So I'm going to do a for loop. If I double click, I get into the properties menu. And so each guide will have a list of parameters. And for each parameter, I have options for how I want to set the parameter. Although depending on the guide, you may be restricted. So in this for loop, I have a start index, an end index, and a increment. In this case, the increment can only be set manually. So it's just this end slider. And depending on the type of parameter, I might be able to change the type of slider. Maybe I want to make this a Boolean or a vec. For an incrementing an iterator, obviously, it's only going to be an integer. So if you don't want to do it manually, you can also have attribute, which lets you grab specific attributes from the scene or variables on the guide itself, or a guide, as in you can have a sub guide. So you can have a sub command say what this parameter's value is going to be. But just for this for loop, let's say I want to create 10 new shapes. So 0 to 10 and increment by 1. And then if I expand the for loop, I can go into my shapes and I will spawn it, or spawn a shape. It has no parameters for now, at least. And then I can create a new variable inside this for loop. So I can go to create, and the variable will just be called, let's call it new shape. And then let's set the value of this new shape to be the last shape in the current shapes list. So I can go to commands, array access, and I will select the shapes, and you'll see that I have highlighting based on whether it's a valid attribute. And let's grab it at index -1, so it'll be the last one. And then let us do a set command here. And I'll take that variable I just created, new shape. And what I want to set is, let's say, the position. And depending on what you click, you'll see that the manual option will change. So let's make this a random position. So let's create a random command. I'll right click this because I'll make it a vec3. And let's make it between -1 and 1. And let's also do a set on the shape type. And let's make you a random value between 0 and 4, or I'd say 5. So now if I run this, I have 10 shapes randomly positioned with random shape types. And so this is a guide that I'll run on start. So as soon as I hit play, we can see that it runs the guide. Let us now create a new guide. And this guide we will have run every frame. But in this case, instead of doing a loop, we'll have it on a delay. And we can say how many seconds. So let's say every 2 seconds, we can then give it a list of commands to run, or a list of other guide items to run. In which case, let's just rotate the whole object. So I'll go into rotate, and let's do an offset of rotation of, these are in degrees, so let's just say 20 degrees. Let's update. So now, if I hit play, spawn shapes, and then every 2 seconds it's going to rotate 20 degrees. And I could still, update the stuff here. And guides can also be dynamically updated on the fly. So instead of every 2 seconds, let's take this every 1 second. Or, it's a slider, so I can just do this. Until I'll stop, I'll restart it. Although it's going to reset the amount. And that's basically it for at least what I have for now. I have various ideas for how to improve this or add new features. But just with the existing guide items that I've implemented so far, I plan to be able to, create some interesting scenes or some small games with it. Anyways, thanks for watching.